Right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our second to last webinar of this fall webinar series. Today, we are going to talk about all the various inclusive higher education options within Colorado and kind of how you can help figure out either for yourself or for your student, which campus might best serve each individual student. So with that, my name is Elise Kramer. I am the program coordinator for In Pathways to Inclusive Higher Education. I fully predict that after this session, there will be lots and lots of questions. So if that's the case, please contact me. That phone number is my direct contact. You can text, email, call, whatever you need. I want to help get your family members to the right spots for them. So with that, thank you so much for joining. This is just kind of a general housekeeping before we get started. So as I mentioned, this is the second to last webinar of our fall series. You will receive this slide deck along with recording sometime tomorrow. When you do, if you're interested in viewing any of our previous webinars of the fall series, all of the recordings are linked in that document linked on that first webinar link there. And then just so you know, there is Q&A time allotted throughout. However, lots of people are kind of like, I need to get this out or I'll forget it. And that includes me. I'm that kind of person too. So if that's you, feel free to put your questions in the chat or just interrupt me, raise your hand, whatever you need. I want this to be as conversational and helpful for you. So please don't feel the need to wait until that allotted Q&A time unless you want to, and that's up to you. With that, please also remember that this is recorded. So just keep in mind what kinds of questions you might want to ask. This is going on YouTube. So please keep that in mind. And then once you log off today, there's a quick little 30-second survey that I would love it if you would take it. I'm trying to work on creation for our next semester webinar series. So if you have thoughts on what you'd like me to cover, please tell me that as well. All right, with that was kind of all the housekeeping. Thank you again for joining. Okay, so IN is a nonprofit. We create and support inclusive college opportunities specifically for students with intellectual disability. Those college opportunities focus on these 4 main areas, which I will cover throughout this webinar. But those areas are academic growth, social development, career advancement, and independence. As a nonprofit, we have these 4 main kind of charges. So we work a lot on education and outreach. The webinar series is a big part of that. We also work to expand throughout the state, report on outcomes. All of that is to say we don't actually serve students directly on campus. So a lot of your questions I might be able to answer. Hopefully I will. There may be a handful of questions that I have to say. I'll get back to you because every campus serves students a little bit differently. And that's what we're here to learn about today is how and what does that look like. All right, with that said, we have a really, really packed agenda. So I know I'm speaking a little bit quickly. That's so we can get it all in. And there is a chance we don't review everything, and that's okay. Like I said, you'll get the slides. You can review things on your own and contact me. With that said, we're going to go over inclusive higher ed kind of as a whole, what it is, and then what that looks like here in Colorado. Then we're going to take a deep dive into each IHE's offerings. Then we'll talk about the applications and admissions processes, both generally and specifically. And then hopefully you'll leave here with some resources. So that's our agenda for today. Like I said, it's pretty packed. Let's jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about what inclusive higher ed is, just kind of as a baseline. What is the model of, and you'll hear me say IHE, inclusive higher ed. So what is the model of IHE in Colorado specifically, as well as nationally? So IHE is specifically college opportunities for students with intellectual disability, and there is an alternative admission pathway. For the most part, the admission to IHE is separate from the campus admissions office, oftentimes does not go through the campus admissions office at all. And so we'll spend a good deal today talking about what does that look like. But know that it is specifically for students with intellectual disability or other disability category. That means they would need to access both accommodations and modifications to be successful at the college level. Many people understand the difference between those two, but also many people don't. So just a very, very basic example, if a professor said you have a 5-page paper and 1 week to write it, an accommodation would be you're still writing that 5-page paper, but you have 2 weeks to write it. Or you can do speech to text, and so you're not typing it, but you're still getting the same 5-page paper kind of information down. The modification would be maybe you're writing a 1-page paper, or you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or a verbal presentation. So the actual depth and breadth of the assignment is changed to meet a student's skill levels and abilities. Because of that, it's important to kind of recognize that that means that students will not receive a degree. So I'll talk about that in a few bullet points here. Oftentimes we are asked, can I come visit the inclusive higher ed on campus? And the answer is kind of yes and kind of no. And the reason is you're just visiting campus and you're just seeing college students going about their lives. So students enrolled in inclusive higher ed are fully included in the academic life, campus life, all that kind of stuff. They're typical college students. It is not a segregated special education class that happens to be on a college campus. They are college students who just happen to be receiving some additional supports. With that, the typical, and again, it can change depending on the campus, depending on the student, but typically what we see are students taking 2 academic courses. Those are in line with their career goals. And so those are same classes, same professors as all their other peers on campus, again, really fully included in those academic courses. And then often there is 1 direct instruction course. Typically that course is specifically targeted to the students within the IHE on campus. And that's where they are learning skills like executive functioning support, independent living skills, job skills, a lot of skills that might be particularly necessary for the ID community to learn. So oftentimes that particular course is not inclusive. That is targeted, directed to the IHE students. Like I said, all of those academic courses align with a student's career goal. So if they want to be a photojournalist, they can kind of pick different classes within the course schedule to make that happen. They can take courses in journalism, photography, business, whatever they feel it may take to kind of give them the skills they need for their particular career goal, even if that's not necessarily a major on the college campus. So they can kind of piecemeal their own academic plan, which gives a little bit more choice, which is really exciting. And then, as I mentioned before, because students are receiving modifications, they are not eligible for a degree. They are not showing the same depth and breadth of knowledge as their degree-seeking peers, and so they walk out with a certificate credential. It is still really weighty. It is still very, very meaningful. This is not something that someone like wrote with crayon and said, here you go, you graduated. There are still lots of requirements that students have to meet to earn that credential. With that said, if your student can be successful in college on a degree-seeking path, meaning they are not receiving modifications, I urge you to try that path first. Lots of campus-wide supports exist on college campuses for all students, and students in inclusive higher ed are encouraged to use those supports as necessary. So there are tutoring centers, writing centers, there might be like, office hours for math help, that kind of thing. And students access all of those supports, just like all their other peers. And then wherever those supports maybe don't meet students' needs, that's where that inclusive office will come in to provide kind of that additional layer of help. And then all along the way, students participate in career readiness, in independent living, or other forms of kind of independence training. They are fully fledged members of their campus community, going to their sports games and joining clubs and all that kind of stuff. And then they receive support from both staff as well as peer mentors in 4 main areas. So I'm going to cover these clockwise. So academically, as I mentioned, students are fully included in all of their courses. In other states, students in inclusive higher ed may not be fully matriculated students on campus. So what that means is in other places, IHE students may just be auditing courses, but they're not necessarily receiving grades for their time sitting in those courses. That is not true in Colorado. Students are fully matriculated. They have the same rights and responsibilities as every other student on campus. They just happen to get modifications in addition to accommodations. But again, that certificate credential is linked to that modification piece. For the most part, students have access to the full course catalog, so they can take any course on campus that excites them. They may have to take them in sequence, right? So you probably can't take a 400 class before you've taken the 1, 2, 300 classes, but very, very likely students can take whatever class they want. And with that, they're held to pretty high standards. Students meet the standards that they are held to. But again, a reminder that students can't just expect to show up and get participation grades. They have to do the assignments, work with their peer mentors, study for tests, all that kind of stuff, just like every other college student on that campus. Socially, students are very involved. They are joining clubs or even sometimes starting clubs. Oftentimes we see peer mentors who go to events with students for a time or two. They may go to an event like a football game or a new club that just formed or something like that. And then what we see is students, because they've chosen events or clubs or whatever the case may be, with other like-minded individuals who've also chosen that same event or club, they often make friends and they don't need the peer mentors to escort them or assist in those environments anymore, because they've kind of formed their own natural supports. And then often we've even seen students rise to leadership opportunities, becoming the president or the vice president or the treasurer or whatever it may be of those different clubs and events, which is really exciting. In terms of career, students go through a whole career progression. And so ideally, that means they kind of spend their first year figuring out what they want their dream job to look like. That's kind of more career coaching, career exploration. And then ideally, their second year, they maybe will get an on-campus job in like the dining hall of the library, right? They may not be in their chosen fields, but they're learning job skills. They're learning how to show up on time, how to interact with maybe clients or customers who aren't happy. How do you communicate with your boss if you're sick and can't show up that day? All those kinds of soft skills that apply across careers. And then ideally, they will kind of by their third, fourth year, get internships or jobs on or off campus in their chosen field so that they can kind of figure out if that really is the job that they want and if their courses have prepared them for that job. And if not, then what courses can we take to kind of fill those gaps? And then in terms of independence, some campuses offer residential living. We'll talk about which here in a few slides. But even at the ones that don't, students, when I talk to them and say, what has been the most impactful part of your college experience? Pretty much every student, no matter what campus they attend, say, I have become so much more independent. I am a great self-advocate. I have so much more confidence. When students are kind of put in the position where they have to get themselves from this class to that class, and maybe they're in buildings across campus, or they have to get up on time and get themselves on the bus to get to campus, or they have to do whatever it takes to be an independent self-advocate on a college campus, many, many students grow, and I would say almost all students grow leaps and bounds in their independence. Not to mention the fact that they all engage in person-centered, or some campuses call it person-driven planning, where they are really put in the driver's seat and they get to say, this is what I want out of my college experience. This is what I want out of my life after college, and let's figure out a plan to get me there. So lots and lots of support in terms of independence development as well. So these are the 4 pillars. We'll sometimes call this the model of inclusive higher ed. And so this is kind of what you can expect from everywhere in Colorado in terms of inclusive higher ed. Now, we're going to go over kind of some of the basic differences between each one, then we'll go into some of the more specific differences. So what I will say is I'm going to pull this up just one line at a time. When you receive these slides, if you click it, you can download it as one PDF and view the whole thing. Just for chunking purposes, I'm going to split it up. So we're going to start, again, these are just at a glance. A lot of this information may change from year to year, but as of now, this is kind of where we are at. And I'm going to go through alphabetical order. That's how we got to the order we're choosing. So Arapahoe Community College has Elevate. That is in Littleton, Colorado. It's a commuter campus, so you'll see that the on-campus living, residential living box is empty. That CTP status, checkbox. Basically what that means for you, it means more than this, but for purposes of families and students, CTP is a federal status that effectively means you get federal funding as well as funding from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or DVR. So ACC has that CTP status. Their estimated tuition and fees somewhere around $6,000. And what's unique about them is I said that all of these courses kind of have that targeted direct instruction course for students with ID. And at ACC, that course is free. So students take 9 credits, they only pay for 6, which is really unique. CSU-RAM Scholars, this is officially in its first year this year. Their CTP status is in progress, will happen ideally before the end of the school year, but we'll see. Their estimated tuition and fees ranges could be anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000. And they are a 3-year opportunity, really unique in that they are specifically training students for agricultural trades. So students there take classes in things like animal husbandry and horticulture, and lots of courses to specifically prepare them for a lot of the job openings up there in Larimer County, where Fort Collins is located, which are often in those kind of agricultural fields. They do intend to have residential living for RAM Scholar students eventually. They don't want to offer that before they're ready. So not really sure when that's going to happen, hopefully in the next few school years, but at least for now, that is a commuter campus. Lamar Community College, LCC, so that will launch next fall. That's what the asterisk is. And so you'll see that denotation once the whole chart pops up at the very end. So they don't open until next year, which means we don't have a lot of info yet because they're still in their planning phase. They will have on-campus living probably in 2 school years. But if you don't know where Lamar is, it's in the southeast corner of Colorado. They serve lots of students from Oklahoma as well as Kansas because it is kind of near that tri-state border. And so really uniquely for a community college, they do offer residential living, which is not super common for community colleges. MSU Denver has Inclusive Higher Education Solutions, or IHES. Again, CTP in progress, will hopefully be in place by the end of the school year, if not before next school year, ideally. That is in the heart of downtown Denver. Again, their tuition ranges from $13,000 to $18-ish thousand. Typically takes students 4 years to get through that. And then what is unique about MSU Denver is that even that direct instruction course that I've mentioned a few times at MSU is open to students who are not IHES students. So all students on campus can take those kinds of executive functioning, relationship management types of courses, which is really unique. So it's 100% inclusive there. Pikes Peak State College, also not opening till next fall, which means we don't have tons of information on that either. That is in Colorado Springs, 3-year programming, CTP and status. We'll know more hopefully soon. Regis University, so the Global Inclusive Program. This is in that like kind of northwest part of Denver. They do have on-campus living. Students can choose to use it. They don't have to. They could commute if they live in the Denver area. You'll notice that their tuition is much higher. This is the only private school that offers inclusive higher ed in Colorado. With that said, they have a lot of scholarships available. Everywhere has a lot of scholarships available. All of that just to say, if cost is the only reason why you would count out Regis, at least do some research first to see what kind of help there is for your particular family's financial situation. And then with that, you'll see this is our first school that we've gone over that currently has residential living. Those things can range in terms of cost based on like, do students live in a single or a double? What kind of meal plan do they have? All kinds of stuff. So even those can range pretty greatly, but you just know you have to add that tuition cost to that residential living cost to get to the total price of college per school year. They have a 1-year, a 2-year, a 3-year, and a 4-year option. We'll talk about that a little bit later in our webinar, but that is a Jesuit school. So they kind of operate on Jesuit values. They have these pretty cool career certificates. All of that, again, details to come as we dig into the more specific nitty-gritty elements. And then UCCS, the Office of Inclusive Services. This is only the second of 3 schools in the nation to have received a national accreditation. Basically what that means is they've gone through a very lengthy process to prove that the services that they are providing to students with ID on their campus are kind of above what is kind of like the bare minimum requirements. We fully expect every school in the state to have that accreditation eventually. That accreditation body just started in the last few years. So they're not there yet, but it's pretty cool that UCCS has gained that. They do have that CTP status. Tuition's about $22,000 or so a year. On-campus living ranges from $10,000 to $13,000 for your opportunity. And then you'll see that all of these schools, the minimum age that students have to be to enroll is 18. UCCS also has a maximum. So students have to be 26 when they start their school freshman year. They cannot be older, specifically for OIS students. And then they have students there have the full choice of offerings on campus. So at other campuses, they may have encountered like a department or a professor or kinds of things where they maybe have figured out that it's maybe not the best fit for IHE students. Maybe the professors are less amenable to having students in class, or kind of for a variety of reasons. Maybe their students can take almost every course in the course catalog, but not every course. And at UCCS, that's not the case. If it's a course offered, students can take it. And then lastly, UNC, go on and learn. They also have that CTP status. Tuitions somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. Residential living is about $12,000 for your option. And then notice they also have an age max. So students have to be no older than 25 when they enroll. And then this is the only school in the nation, in the state, only school in the state that requires students to be their own guardians. So this is per the UNC legal department. This is like out of the hands of the goal staff. But if students are not their own guardians, don't even apply because they will not accept you. All students there live in a designated residential learning community. So what that means is all the goal students live in one dorm. Their RAs are very specifically trained on how to kind of work with students with those specific needs. And then ideally, there's a staff member whose office is in that dorm as well, who can also kind of step in and help when necessary. So again, this is just kind of an at a glance. We're going to go through really specific kind of nitty-gritty details of all of this as we go through. But so far, are there any burning questions I can answer? All right, and we're going to keep checking. Okay, so let's do more of a deep dive into what makes each school unique. Okay, so elevated ACC. Again, this is a commuter campus. That means students have to get their own transportation. To get there, lots of students use RTD. There's a light rail line that goes right by campus. Certainly lots of students use Access-a-Ride, Uber, some, but I would say not most students can drive themselves, but you got to figure out your own transportation. The average class size across the campus at ACC is 25. So what that means is there's a lot more opportunities for students to interact with their instructors as well as other students. You're really hard pressed to find like the big lecture style classes at ACC as a whole, which is more conducive to typically students with ID, more conducive to kind of that small group, more individualized learning experience, which is really exciting. They also have, as I mentioned, that Elevate workshop. So that's that course that focuses on things like living skills, financial literacy, healthy relationships, those kinds of things. I should say every semester, the curriculum for that changes. So they don't take the same class twice, but they do take a class called Elevate Workshop every semester. That is free, always. So students do not pay for 3 credits right off the bat. And then in terms of social and community engagement, lots of ACC students have joined national merit or honor societies. We've had students in their student government. The Elevate Club, which was formed by some of the Elevate students a few years ago, within that has a few kind of branch off clubs itself. So they have a unified gaming club, they have a creative club, sports club. I think I'm missing a few too, but there's kind of a natural place for students to start engaging in on-campus clubs and things, kind of as a gateway to others if they're not comfortable starting elsewhere. And then it is walking distance from historic downtown Littleton. There's a light rail right there. It's a big kind of shopping area with restaurants and coffee shops and all kinds of stuff. So lots of students between classes are going into downtown Littleton. They're engaging with their community. they're taking the light rail to, there's another nearby mall, and they're kind of, you know, getting themselves out and about and really engaging in their broader community, even outside of the campus community, which we see everywhere. But that's kind of part and parcel of the kind of social expectations at ACC. CSU Ram Scholars, there's, again, no residential living yet. Ideally, it's coming, but students for now do have to have their own transportation to and from campus. Now, as I mentioned, this is kind of an agriculturally focused program. So if students don't have a motivation to develop career skills specifically in agriculture or related sciences, this is probably not the option for them. Students spend a lot of time like on the farm, working with animals and learning about what kind of soil is best for this kind of crop or that kind of water condition, right? They do get pretty nitty gritty. So if students don't have an intrinsic interest in that kind of stuff, Ram Scholars is just probably not for them. With that said, it is really hands-on. It is kind of all about experiential learning. They're getting their hands dirty, and I mean very, very literally. They're building their own like stools to sit on while they're milking the cows and that kind of stuff. So if you have a student who is more technical, then maybe that is for them. All of the, I shouldn't say all, most of the peer mentors who support Ram Scholars come from their agricultural education department. So these are students who have gone to college specifically to learn how to be an agricultural teacher, or you might know Future Farmers of America, FFA. So that means that the peer mentors themselves are not only learning how to be educators, they're not only learning how to be agricultural educators, but they are kind of honing their own experience to be future teachers as they are working with the students, which kind of gives them this sort of double like importance to make it work. And so that the way that peer mentorship works is really, really cool. It's very unique, but it is very important in a lot of ways. Students do attend classes in 2 main locations. So lots of classes are on that main Fort Collins campus in those typical classrooms. But then they also have, CSU has what they call the RDEC, which is basically a farm. It's a CSU-owned farm where they do some research there, but they have lots of farm animals and crops and all kinds of things. And so students spend a few days a week there. They do get transportation from the main campus to that RDEC location because it's a few miles away. But they're actively working on a farm, which is very, very, very cool. All right, Cultivate at Lamar Community College. Again, this is new, so it hasn't even opened yet. So don't have lots of information, but this is our first school that is fully, resolutely in a very rural area. Fort Collins can be rural, Greeley can be rural, Lamar is rural. And so that kind of ensures some more geographic access. Our traditional IHE model for a community college in Colorado is 3 years, so that's pretty typical. With that, again, they will have residential living, probably in 2 school years is what we're hoping. And their emphasis is going to be on the employment needs of the Southeast Colorado region. So they have a lot of openings, for example, for paraeducators in their schools, certainly lots of jobs in the agricultural fields. But that's going to be sort of where they try to funnel students so that they can be trained for jobs that are actually open in that region, so that they're not trained for jobs that then they can't attain if they want to live at home and that's where they grew up. With that, it is a really community-oriented campus culture. And by that, I mean Lamar Community College is the only institute of higher education for many surrounding counties. Not only that, it's kind of the hub for lots of just people in those surrounding counties. Lots of people work at LCC, lots of people attend events at LCC because that's kind of where the events are taking place. So even though it is a campus, it is a really kind of community-focused campus, and that it really is kind of like the central hub for this wide community around it, which is pretty unique. MSU Denver, so Inclusive Higher Education Solutions, or IHES. Again, commuter campus, students have to have transportation. It is super easily accessed by RTD. There's 2 different light rail stations, the bus, students can Uber, all kinds of things. They can certainly drive if they can drive. But just keep that in mind, downtown Denver. As I mentioned earlier, all students are fully engaged included in all of their courses. So even that direct instruction course is open to even students who don't have an intellectual disability. And then for students who do have an intellectual disability, there's a wide variety of course offerings They call it the continuum of support, where they are serving students, even students who don't necessarily need the modified courses can still receive support through IHES. So I'm not going to read this whole list, but you'll see they offer academic coaching, executive functioning coaching, lots and lots and lots of types of supports for lots and lots of types of learners. With that said, students are really taught to focus on the process rather than the product of learning. So in other words, they're learning how to learn. They're learning how they themselves learn, right? I don't learn differently than, I don't learn the same as everybody else here, right? We all kind of learn differently. And so they kind of learn like, what's best for my brain? And how can I apply that to a wide variety of academic and non-academic environments? And so that's a really cool element of IHES, that students are taught more than just kind of like, this is what you need for this class, this is what you need for your job, but it's really kind of like, take it and run to whatever your future looks like. Aspire at Pikes Peak. So Aspire is an acronym for Achieving Success Through Personalized, Inclusive, Rural Education. We're going to say Aspire Scholars. That again is a commuter campus, as students have to have their own transportation. The goal of this program is to empower students to live self-directed lives and transition seamlessly into their communities and professional environments. With that traditional community college IHE model, which is 3 years, but they are going to specifically focus on internship placements in years 2 and 3. And so that's going to sort of set them apart, as where typically internships might not happen until years 3 or 4. It's going to be much earlier for students who attend through Aspire Scholars. Global Inclusive at Regis. Again, Regis is a Jesuit university. So what that means is they really fall back on some of those Jesuit values. So specifically, care for the whole person, service for others, contemplation in action. When I read those things, I notice that there's actually nothing about religion in that. So students don't have to be Catholic to attend. They do certainly have to be okay with attending school on a Catholic campus, but their actual religion is not part of the application process. With that said, most Catholic schools, and Regis is no different, have a really strong liberal arts focus. So students in Global take courses in things like religion, philosophy, peace and justice, mathematics, kind of a wide variety of types of classes where they can kind of figure out what interests them and what doesn't interest them. With that said, those first 2 years at Regis are all liberal arts. So there's less choice than there may be at other schools. So that's something that for some families and students is a pro, and for some is a con. Students can choose to live on campus, can also choose to commute. And then all of the professors who teach the Regis Global students are trained in Universal Design for Learning, UDL. There's a lot to UDL, but to kind of sum it up in 1 or 2 sentences, that's a philosophy that basically says that instruction should be given in a way that everybody can learn and everybody can show their learning in the way that works best for them. So students can kind of pick and choose how they show their learning in any given time. They can decide they want to do a PowerPoint presentation this time and a drawing next time. And so that's kind of a very, very basic but brief description of UDL. All right, and then I saw a question in the chat, so let me pause for a second. Where is Aspire? Pikes Peak State College, that is in Colorado Springs, downtown. Okay, and then Regis Global. This is really unique in the way that they have formatted their programs. I'm going to start explaining, but stop me if you have questions. What is unique about Global is they have 3 scaffolded levels of programming. So when we talked about how it could be 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, this is why. I'm going to start from the bottom and describe up. So if students start college for 1 year, they can decide, maybe I'm not sure college is right for me. Let me just try it out. I'll take a year. And then they decide, you know what? That was okay, but maybe college isn't for me. I'm going to be done. Well, they can graduate. They still get a certificate. At Regis, they call it their generalist certificate. Basically, that just means they took a year of courses. They maybe had some career development, but they didn't do the full depth and breadth of a college course work, I should say. Year 2, so if students go back for a second year, they'll take 18 more credits, so for a total of 36. They'll get an internship in that second year, so much more kind of specific nitty-gritty career training. And then at the end of the second year, they graduate and get the specialist certificate. Well, maybe they really are interested in certain careers. So they can come back for year 3 and do what they call a career path certificate. They have to have the specialist certificate before they qualify for the career path. What's really unique is Regis will also take students with the comprehensive higher education certificate who graduated from other schools and then just want to come to Regis for these career path certificates. So what that means is it's a dedicated year to learn like everything there is to know about that one career. Right now they have options in health professions and communication and advocacy. So a student could take year 3, get that health professions career path certificate, and then come back for year 4 and have the communication and advocacy certificate. So effectively what that means is Regis is like 4 separate one-year programs that students can kind of piece together in whatever way works best for them and their families and their finances and that kind of stuff. That can get a little bit confusing. So what questions can I answer about that? Regis would take students from ACC, yes, after they graduate. Yes, good question. Any other questions? All right, stop me if there are. Okay, and then OIS at UCCS, as I mentioned, this is the second school in the nation to receive national accreditation from the Inclusive Higher Education Accreditation Council long-term. If you're curious what that means, you can click that link when you receive the slides and read more. I just picked one quote on the website that I think sums it up pretty well. They demonstrate a level of quality programming for students with ID, in summary. So at UCCS, students receive scaffolded supports. What that means is they begin their freshman year kind of with all the supports that UCCS offers. And by the end of their senior year, most of them have faded away. Rather than saying, just kind of go out there and see, and we'll see what kind of supports you need and we'll add them as necessary. It's kind of an opposite model where we're going to start with things, and as you prove you don't need them, then we will take them away. Students can choose to live on campus. They can also choose to commute if they live in the Colorado Springs area. What's going to be new next school year? So in the past, all students have lived in apartments that are off campus, but barely. When I first saw them, I thought they were on campus because there's just a sidewalk that says, here's campus, here's the apartments. But until now, students have had to live in apartments if they lived on campus. Starting next school year, they can also choose to live in dorms. The recommendation will be freshman, sophomore year living in the more traditional dorm style living, and then off-campus apartments, junior, senior year. Peer mentors will support students living in both. With that said, part of the program fee of OIS includes 6 hours a week of independent living supports from peer mentors and staff. If 6 hours isn't enough, families can pay for additional support. All students at UCCS can take any course on campus, as I mentioned earlier. And then they have that college and career class. That's their targeted instruction course. Again, it's called college and career every semester, but the curriculum rotates. It's on an 8-semester rotating schedule. And they learn things like job skills, executive functioning, relationship management, all those really fun things. And then if students want, they don't have to. They can take a driving seminar if they want to get their driver's license, and if they don't already have it. Okay, and then just another reminder, students can be older than 26 when they graduate, but they cannot enroll later than age 26 at UCCS. All right, UNC goal, and I know I'm going fast, so stop me if there's questions. They again have that designated residential learning community. That means all the goal students live together. Their RAs are specifically trained to kind of deal with some of the more nuanced issues that may arise with the ID population. Again, students have to be their own guardians. So for a lot of families, that's fine and well, but they maybe don't know what that means kind of in practice. So really what that means is there's a big emphasis on students' FERPA rights. Parents don't have access to anything that students don't give them. Parents can't see students' grades. Parents can't see students' bursar bills, anything, unless a student directly forwards it to the parents. That also means the parents are a lot less involved. across the board, parents of college students are just a lot less involved than when your students are in high school. But at UNC, they're even that much less involved than they are at the other campuses. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. What that means is they really only accept students with really high levels of independence. On the GOAL website, it specifically says that students are expected to have accountability, responsibility, and self-determination. It also kind of mentions that students have a lot less structure on the weekends. They might have longer periods of free time that don't necessarily have supervision or support from staff or peer mentors. So those are all just kind of things to keep in mind when thinking about how much support each individual student might need. Students are also expected to already understand what safe boundaries look like. If you're not really sure if that maybe fits your student's description, schedule a meeting with the UNC Goal Director, Christina, and she is always happy to meet with families. So that's the link to meet with her. And then again, at UNC, students can enroll at age 25, but not later than that. All right, I know that was a lot, so what questions can I answer? Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling, but if questions come in the chat, I will stop. Okay, so applications and admissions. There can be a lot to this too. So again, stop me. Okay, so the initial steps, how do you start, are pretty normative. So I would initially schedule a tour to just visit the campus, get a feel for, do I want to be here all day, every day? That kind of thing, right? Meet the students and staff. Do you like those people? How do you schedule a tour? You just do it through the traditional admissions website. Usually scheduling a tour is very obvious. Students and families should think about, how far do you live from the different campuses? How far do you want to live from home, right? So that the desire piece, but also what's perhaps the best option for your own skill set and that kind of stuff as well. Lots of students are really interested in studying, I'll pick something random, archaeology. But if a campus only has one archaeology course, maybe that's not the best campus to learn anything about archaeology, because after one course, then what do you do? So it's important to kind of look into the different course offerings on the campuses to figure out how far can you take your education at that campus given your interest level. And then it's important to complete the FAFSA. That's that federal financial aid worksheet. Oftentimes families don't fill it out because they think it's going to harm them. I hear once or twice a month from families that they don't want to fill it out because they make too much money and it's going to bite them in the butt. And that is not the case. There is no situation in which filling out the FAFSA will hurt your family. And often people are surprised by how much they qualify for. So I really urge you to fill it out. Then you'll want to ask teachers, bosses, coaches, all kinds of people to start writing letters of recommendation, as well as gathering all of the other documentation required for admission. With that said, the application process is slightly different than the normative application process. So if you have been through college applications with other kids, or you remember it for yourself, you may remember lots and lots of things, and some of that is similar and some of that is different. So for IHE, the timeline of application does vary per school. Typically, late fall, early winter, like October, November-ish, applications will open, and then they'll do interviews throughout the spring semester. If you want those specific dates, I do have that on my website. So when you receive these slides, click that link. Again, another reminder, as a nonprofit, we don't serve students, we don't facilitate admission. So you have to apply through each inclusive office. With that said, each inclusive office has their own application process. There is no version of inclusive higher education common app. So if you want to apply to 8 schools, you fill out 8 applications. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Lots of the applications mirror each other, but none of them are identical. What they all require are some form of student questionnaire, some form of questions of the parents or guardians. Oftentimes they'll ask for letters of recommendation, but how many letters they ask for and who they want to write those letters can change. They will all need documentation of that disability. And just know, it does say recent IEPs. They oftentimes do require IEPs, but sometimes that's not enough to prove the medical need for IEG. So keep that in mind too. And then in terms of admissions, students have to be 18 everywhere. Some of them have an age max, but they all have to be at least 18. Again, they have to have documentation of that ID, as well as showing a need for academic modifications. It's really important for the student to have the desire to go to college. All the time, I see really well-meaning family members who are pushing their students to achieve more and do more, and you can do it, and I believe in you, and that's excellent. And I wish more families were that supportive. And the parents are not the ones going to class. The parents are not the ones doing the assignments or meeting with peer mentors or going to their jobs after class, right? So if students don't have the desire to go through that process, just like any other student, college is probably not right for them. It's important for students to be able to take the lead in their participation. Yes, they will receive support in class and in activities, but again, it's students' lives. They've got to be able to self-advocate, take the lead, be as independent as they possibly can. And then everywhere, students have to follow the campus code of conduct. So the list of behavioral expectations. There's support in following that and understanding that, but oftentimes students are not admitted to college campuses due to different behaviors that they may exhibit. And then again, they have to want to engage in a lot of those vocational training experiences, because that really is part and parcel to the college experience in inclusive higher ed. With that said, what is not required? So again, if you're thinking about what you did with other kids, some of that stuff does not apply. So students don't have to show a high school diploma. They do have to show that they've completed the K-12 system, but whether or not they've received a diploma itself is not required. You're not going to find things like GPA minimums or a look at how many AP classes did you take. There's no need for standardized test scores. They're not going to look at, you know, you only volunteered 20 hours instead of 10 kind of thing, or 10 instead of 20. So a lot of that kind of additional stuff is not required. The whole admissions process is alternative. With that said, the decisions themselves are really holistic. So there isn't like one thing that if you do this, you're going to get into college. It's a broad look at kind of the whole application, which is a very lengthy and robust application. So students' learning needs and their own desire to attend college might be considered. Students will have to engage in instruction with all 4 pillars of inclusive higher ed. So if they only want vocational training, for example, well, they can get that elsewhere. So college might not be the best place for just vocational training, right? Or if they're only there for the social aspect, there are places that will offer social experiences that don't necessarily have the other pieces to them as well. It's important for the inclusive office to be able to meet students' needs and students' goals. That can go in different ways. So that may mean that they offer enough support to meet students' needs. That also may mean that, hey, you can actually find the support you need elsewhere. You don't need us because you can get that at this other office on campus or on another campus entirely. They'll look at the ability of students to negotiate the life of a college student. And by that, what I mean is students are going to be transitioning from class to class, from building to building. In some circumstances, they'll be transitioning from the bus to their class, right? Or from class to work. So yes, students receive, again, support in making those things happen, but they're going to look at kind of the flexibility of a student when things go awry, when there's a snow day and now what, right? That kind of stuff. And then they're also going to interview the family. They want to know that families are committed to supporting students' goals appropriately without being overbearing and doing it for students, but also that families need to be on board. And then with that, there's lots of kind of school-specific admissions requirements and part of the process. So I'm going to run through those and then we'll have time for questions. So at Elevate, they're rolling applications, meaning the application never closes. It's open at all times. So you can access that on the Elevate program, click apply, and then their specific application will include the junior year IEP If it's different than the most recent year IEP, a professional letter of recommendation, a personal letter of recommendation. So note that's 2 letters of rec. And then once the application is reviewed, students are brought on campus for what they call an experience day. In that day, they'll have students sit through an admissions interview. They'll also interview the parents and the guardians, and then ultimately make a choice. And if students are accepted, then in August, they take a class called Summer Bridge. That is something that all Elevate students take every August, and it's kind of a reset time. So remind students, this is where the library is, this is where the coffee shop is, these are all your peers, right? Time for them to find their classes before kind of the hubbub of the school year starts, all that kind of stuff. CSU RAM Scholars, their application has not opened yet, but it should in the next few weeks. Once it is open, you'll go to their website to learn more. If you want to be emailed that application directly, they do have an interest form, so you can fill that out, or you can just kind of check back, see when it opens, and then fill out the application itself. They'll probably make their admissions decisions in April, May-ish, with students then starting on campus in August. IHES also has rolling applications, so you'll go to their website, you'll scroll down and then click apply to an IHES program. It's a pretty weighty packet, so know that. A lot of the other ones you're maybe filling out like a Google form or something like that. This is a packet, so just know that that is a little bit different. This will include students' high school transcripts, their latest IEP, 3 letters of recommendation or letters of reference. They'll have to submit results from a current physical. Parents fill out a readiness scale. And then the applicant as well as the parent sit through an interview as well. And you'll notice that's pretty consistent. Global at Regis. So this one is unique that students do actually apply through the admissions office, but only kind of. So you'll go to their website, you'll scroll down, click learn how to apply. And then from there, it walks you through step by step by step. What do you do? So what happens is they do create a portal within the admissions website, but it's if they answer the questions the way they're told to in that learn how to apply section, their application is funneled to a very specific admissions officer who works side by side with the global director to make those admissions decisions. So students write an essay about their desire to attend college. But remember, we talked about how everything at Regis and for the global students is all focused on UDL. So students don't have to write. They can submit a voice description or a picture or something. They just have to indicate why do they want to go to college some way, somehow. They'll submit transcripts. They can be official or unofficial, some form of psycho-evaluation, educational evaluation. And then if students are accepted, they will do a person-centered planning process where they kind of figure out what do they want out of their college experience. And then at the start of the year, they have a 3-day new student orientation, which again, kind of walks them through campus, helps them meet staff, their peers, all that kind of stuff. OIS at UCCS, their application opened October 1st, and it will stay open until January 31st. On their homepage, you'll click admissions, then there's a drop-down, click application. You will submit your most recent IEP as well as your junior year IEP, a high school transcript that can be official or unofficial as well. 2 letters of rec, they are specified. One has to be from a teacher and one from a community member. And then again, you'll see this pattern. Students and families are brought on campus for an interview. They will make their decisions in May of 2025 or maybe even sooner. For this current school year, they said they would make decisions no later than May of 2024. And I think they made decisions in like February or mid-March. So no later than May, but probably sooner. And then all students, new or returning, all OIS students go to Mountain Lion Academy, which is their orientation for students and families. That is multiple days long on campus before the school year begins. And then lastly, UNC Goal. From the Goal homepage, click is Goal right for me and read through the requirements. As I mentioned, they are a little bit different in what kinds of students they serve and what levels of support they will offer. So it's really important to read through that is Goal right for me and kind of assess where does your student fit into that. If you're ready to apply, You'll submit both a student application as well as a parent application. Students will fill out a personal support inventory, which asks questions like, I know how and when to change the sheets on my bed. I know when food has expired. Questions like that. And so they really want to figure out how independent can students be, because again, they don't offer as much support as other campuses do. Students will have to submit 3 professional references. Parents also fill out a survey. Are the parents ready to kind of have their role change and be more hands-off in college? Transcripts, psychoeducational evaluation, and then they are brought on campus for a 1.5 day long applied interview, which really allows goal staff to figure out, is this student someone that we can appropriately support on our campus? Are they okay with novel experiences? How do they interact with others? That kind of stuff. And then they also have a 2-day new student orientation before the school year begins. All right, and then both Cultivate and Aspire, we don't know a lot yet. Their applications haven't opened. They don't even have websites yet, because as I mentioned, they are still in their planning year. But what we do know, their applications will open at some point during the spring semester. Ideally, they will have their admissions decisions before the end of next semester, with enrollment finalized no later than summer. They are going to start pretty small, probably about 5 students per cohort per year for probably the first 2 or 3 school years before they start accepting more than 5 students. But for more details on that, just stay tuned on our website. That link goes directly to the place where we will keep you updated on that. Okay, that was a lot, and I know we're running up on time. So any and all questions, throw them out. All right, I'll check the chat in a bit, but I will keep chugging. Okay, so just some resources for you. You can review these on your own. If you're not sure what level of college support would be best for your student, maybe you're not sure if IHE is appropriate or not, we have a handout as well as a webinar that we just did. You can access those. If you're not sure how to pay for inclusive higher ed, we just did a webinar last month on that. There's a whole handout on financial variables as well, so you can access those. And then the other thing I want to draw your attention to, again, when you receive this, if you click this picture, it'll download into the PDF version. When you go on campus and you are being interviewed and your student is being interviewed to figure out if that particular college campus is the right fit for your student, and if your student is the right fit for that college campus, it's important that students and families also ask questions of the program directors and of the IHE staff to make sure that you kind of know what your student would be getting into, what kind of support they would receive, what kind of support they wouldn't receive, all that kinds of stuff. So this is just a starting list of questions. It's not all encompassing, but it is a good place to start. So I encourage you to at least skim it, get some ideas. There's also lots of national resources. So if you're not familiar with Think College, they're a national resource hub for inclusive higher ed. I highly recommend taking a look through their website, or at least starting at the few things that are linked here, as well as other ways to get involved within and kind of learn more about what we offer and how we can help. With that, please take this survey when you are done. Again, it should take you 30 seconds or less, but otherwise, I'm done.